Uh, Hello, Joe's on, and I am here for a special discussion with Mr. Elad Gross, a civil rights attorney, government transparency advocate, general sunshine law warrior, I would say. Now, on the first episode, we talked quite a bit about the sunshine law, current issues facing the law. But again, I'm just some dude. So I wanted to get an expert to talk about it and the fight to protect it. So first of all, thanks for doing this.
Oh, absolutely.
So I think let's start basic, right? I think the average citizen, why should we care about the Sunshine Law? Why should we care about government transparency, right? Like I care about potholes being filled, right? So let's talk about that.
Yeah. Well, the Sunshine Law is a very important one. It was actually passed in Missouri in 1973. A number of states did the same thing. We've got a federal one called the Freedom of Information Act, or FOIA. Many folks are familiar with that. A lot of this came out of in response really to the Nixon administration and the need for transparency, because we saw what happens when we don't have it. And we had a president who was on the verge of impeachment if he didn't resign, doing a lot of criminal things. So that's really the importance of these laws about public records, about having meetings in public, about being able to see what our government is doing is fundamental to how our system works, and to be able to participate in that system as just some guy. Look, I mean, I was just some guy. I had no idea how any of this stuff worked. I went to law school. I didn't really do government transparency work. I just saw something that someone was doing that was really disturbing with a government office and wondered why that was okay and asked for some information. And then that led me to going to court for the last almost 4 years, asking for records from a number of different agencies and organizations, and finding that unfortunately far too many government officials don't want to be transparent. They don't want to follow the law. They're not here to give you information. In fact, many of them think that if you do not participate, their jobs become easier. And I think that attitude is a very bad one, because at the end of the day, you and I, we've got to drive over potholes all the time. We've got problems with education, healthcare, all of these things. And that's oftentimes because folks in our government don't think they have to be responsive to us. And if we don't enforce laws like the Sunshine Law that we have in Missouri, those problems are going to multiply out of proportion, even to the point where we are now. You think it's bad now, it can only get worse if we eliminate transparency in government. Yeah, so that's why it's been so important to me, and I'm sure to a lot of other folks who care about these things.
Makes perfect sense. You know, I mean, the old sunlight is the best disinfectant, right? That's what they say.
That's right.
So, you know, and to the point, right? Like you were some guy, and you've slowly gotten more and more involved to the point where, again, I call you an expert. And a part of that is because you are one of the few people that actually has argued in front of the Missouri Supreme Court and won, as you were trying to get some more information from the governor specifically. So can you just talk to us a little bit about that? Because I also think that aspect of what happened coming out of that court decision is going to have a lot to do with the bill that I'm going to ask you about from Bill DeGroot.
Yeah. So that was litigation that started at a trial court level. I asked for records from the governor's office. So our current Governor Mike Parson, was in office at the time. This was back in 2018. So for much of that year, he wasn't the governor. Eric Greitens was instead, and Mike Parson was the lieutenant governor. Eric Greitens resigned in disgrace after doing a lot of bad things. He actually resigned. He was fighting all of these allegations of him trying to blackmail a woman that he was abusing, that he was having an affair with, and a whole bunch of things. He didn't resign over that. He resigned shortly after a judge ordered him to reveal the names of secret political donors to this dark money organization he was essentially selling influence to through his office. And that was the day that he said, you know what, I'm done here. Let me make a deal, and I'm leaving. And he did. And so the investigations into all of that were ongoing by the Missouri legislature, but everybody dropped them. Prosecutors, our legislature, the attorney general didn't really do anything. And I thought that was wrong and didn't understand why we weren't looking into it. And so I started to, and at one point I had to ask for records from the governor because that's where Eric Greitens was working. And they said that they had 13,000 records responsive to my request. And I was, well, wow, why are there so many? But they refused to give them to me unless I paid over $3,600 and essentially waited for more than half a year. And reading the Sunshine Law, and I was like, what? I don't understand why this is okay.
Yeah. It's almost like they were trying to get you to just give up.
That's usually what happens in these cases. I have learned over the years is that, there's a big bill that you get after asking for these records, and it gets confusing. And the folks who see the records and know what's in them and have control over them aren't very forthcoming oftentimes about what those records are. Now, that's not to say that every government official is like that. Some do this the right way, and they work with you very hard to try to get you what you're asking for. That was not the case here. In fact, they were charging me for an attorney to review the records. So they were billing me for their own attorney fees. And I thought that was very wrong, because just imagine what that would mean for regular folks. Most people, most of these local government entities, they might hire an outside attorney who's charging $300, $400, sometimes more per hour. And now you're billing that to an individual who's just asking for, some basic records from their school board, for example. So, it was pretty fundamental. If you didn't have access to these records because of a paywall, essentially, then you don't have access to those records. And so that's where I went to court and eventually went all the way to Missouri Supreme Court, where I got a unanimous decision from that court saying, no, you can't do that. Do not do this. Actually follow the law. And unfortunately, right now, I've got some additional litigation that's ongoing, one involving that case still, but other ones where a lot of government entities aren't really interested in following the law, as the Supreme Court has very clearly just restated last year. So working very hard on that.
Surprise, surprise, right? We talked about the fact in the episode that only about 30% of the government here in Missouri is actually following the Sunshine Law per Nicole Galloway's audit. But the thing that I find really fun about what came out of your Supreme Court decision here is that some of the folks in the Missouri government have taken, I think, that as an idea that that's something they should fix, that paywall specifically. Right. And so the bill, HB 2049, from Representative DeGroot. Have you looked at this fun piece of legislation at all? I'd love to hear your thoughts. I went through it, but again, as somebody who's in it, I'd love to hear what you think. Is this a good thing for Missouri?
No, no. I think there are some parts of it that, look, I think that the Sunshine Law needs to be reformed. And I've actually spoken to the representative. He would kill me if I called him Representative DeGroot on here. Bruce is what he prefers. We had a really good conversation. We did not agree on everything, but there are some parts of that bill that I think are a little bit less controversial. So, for example, if you are you live in a municipality that happens to have a public governmental entity that runs your utilities, then your bills are government records that could be sunshined by somebody, right? And you're giving people your personal billing information. That's a little weird. There's some where, for example, if, there's some concerns like somebody is emailing really personal information to their representative or something. There are some concerns about security for folks and their personal privacy. I get that. I totally understand. And I do not need, to read some super private information that you're trying to share with your representative. Now, I don't think that allows us to then say, let's throw out all communications that our government officials are having with anyone, because I mean, obviously, look, I mean, they're going to start communicating in ways that we certainly should be seeing, and it's part of the legislative process. It's part of avoiding any kind of semblance of corruption or corruption itself, and we should see who is trying to influence legislation. But yeah, I think that there's some changes that should be made. In my view, and I've expressed this multiple times, instead of trying to really lessen the impact of the Sunshine Law, and I mean, there are some provisions in this bill especially that essentially try to reverse everything that I did at the Supreme Court, which would then allow the government to charge attorneys' fees, would allow them to say, hey, I'm going to put these charges up, and if you don't pay me by this time, then your request goes away. I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff in here that specifically we learned the governor asked for because he lost at the Supreme Court to me. So I don't think that those clearly established rights that we have to see what our government is doing should be thrown out by any means. My view is, if we do want to change the Sunshine Law, there's a really easy way to do it that would comply with what the spirit of the law is and really fix a whole lot of these charging problems and what all else that we're talking about. And that is automatically make public records public and make them accessible to the public. It's 2022. We've got the internet. Heck, you mentioned Auditor Nicole Galloway. She's done that, where she responds to a Sunshine request. She'll put every document online for anybody to see. Some other government entities have been doing that all across the country. So it's not impossible to do. And in fact, in that Supreme Court decision and in what the law says, it specifically tells government entities, when you have open records and you have some records that shouldn't be open, it's your job to separate those before anybody makes a request to you anyway. So, just have that person take them. Everything's becoming electronic anyway. Put them online for anybody to see. You reduce significantly the need for folks to make these requests, to go to litigation, to get records, all of that. There will still be some of that too. But this is a really easy way to make government transparent. And, in a lot of ways, a cost-effective way to avoid a lot of the litigation that some folks, it would be better if we weren't using public taxpayer money to hide public records from the public. But, what do I know? I guess I'm just a guy too here. But hopefully they stop that practice, because I'd rather my taxpayer money go to the roads or schools or something a little bit better than that.
Very fair. So, obviously that's some big stuff, but also the other one that I related to the Sunshine Law kind of got under my skin a little bit was finding out that the AG has the ability to really, he's sort of the gatekeeper on a lot of this stuff. He can say, if he wants, to simply block, the average citizen from getting most anything from government entities, or he can just, send it out, force them to send whatever he wants out for political purposes or otherwise. What about that piece? I mean, is there anything we can do there? Like, do we just, I don't know, throw up our hands? How do we attack that?
Yeah, we've got a big problem. So the problem is the Attorney General of Missouri is the best positioned under the law, and given the resources of that office, to enforce Missouri's Sunshine Law. Like the Sunshine Law says, hey, Attorney General, you can come in and go and make sure that folks are following. In fact, if you go to his website, or if you go to, you just Google filing a Sunshine complaint in Missouri, the website that will come up is the Attorney General's website. And that is a role that right there on the page, it says, well, I can't be your attorney, but I'm representing the interest of the people of Missouri. So that's my job. Problem is, the Attorney General is extremely selective about which Sunshine Law cases he's taking. And it appears that under our current Attorney General, that selection criteria is primarily based on how he's feeling politically, which is a really sad statement on what's going on. I mean, anytime you have a prosecutor has discretion to determine what's going to be charged, what's going to be investigated. But when you have, this law essentially sitting in the Attorney General's office waiting for him to do something on our behalf, that's a problem when that office doesn't want to do anything. So yeah, I think there are some ways to fix that problem. And there was a really good article recently in the Missouri Independent that kind of went through some emails that came from that office. And it showed that there was an internal discussion. Look, I used to be an assistant attorney general in Missouri, so I know that there are cases where, for example, I might have one client that I'm representing and I'm in the St. Louis office, and then somebody in the Kansas City office or Springfield or wherever, they would represent a client that might have different interests. And we can't talk about the case unless we're negotiating. We're not sharing information. That is a situation where you're what's called walling off one department or one attorney from the other so that there isn't a conflict of interest. And some people are going to argue, I mean, there still is to some degree. I could see that argument, but you do your best to try to avoid that through the procedures that you have. And in that article, the Missouri Independent reporter, Tessa Weinberg, discovered that, well, in fact, there were discussions about that when it came to the Sunshine Law, that maybe we should have, an office that's pretty walled off from the rest of everybody else so that they can enforce the law against state agencies, even if part of the office might be representing one or the other. I filed a complaint with the Attorney General in 2018 before I started litigation. It's 2022. I still haven't heard anything back. That's kind of a common occurrence for a lot of folks. And in some cases, they found that when you give the Attorney General information about a violation of the Sunshine Law, the Attorney General takes that information, goes to the person who's violating the law, tells them, hey, can you, change this, that, or the other so that you're less likely to get sued. So they're essentially just representing the people and making it easier for them to hide records from the public. And that is not a workable solution to enforcing that law. So there have been some proposals where either, you've got a competent attorney general who knows how to wall off one office from the other and have them do their job and let them actually enforce the law and create some independence in that. Or you have a separate office, like some kind of an ombudsman office that some states have, where there is essentially, I mean, if the attorney general is going to say that he represents the people of Missouri, but then not actually represent the people of Missouri when those interests are up, then you have to have an office that's going to do that. That's essential for, some kind of a public counsel or something to have, because it's expensive to hire an attorney, go to court, litigate your case, even if you're doing it yourself. I mean, there's a filing fee, there's time that you're taking. There's a whole bunch of stuff that the state's going to throw at you to try to extend the costs and everything else that's involved. So, it's really essential to have some kind of a government entity involved in enforcing the law. And that's just not what's happening right now under our current system, unfortunately.
Yeah. It's almost like transparency is cheaper and better all around. But again, who knows?
Who knows?
So I think what the way that I'd like to end it is a call to action, right? Like, what can the average citizen, reading up on this, maybe watching this interview, like, what can we do, right? What can we do to help?
Yeah. Well, one big thing is to get involved in government. So if you're interested in running for office, to do that. If you're not, that's okay. You can help other people do it. If you're super jazzed up on this Sunshine Law issue, which I think everybody should, I've got a website that's out there right now where you can sign up to get updates and essentially volunteer. Part of that is testifying or submitting written testimony to the legislature. And I've got some videos that, teach people how to do that and releasing that kind of stuff all the time too. So if you'd like to learn more about getting involved specifically with the Sunshine Law or even in government in general, if you go to SaveMoSunshine.org, that will get you to that website with a little bit of a description there. But yeah, I would encourage folks really, get involved and stay involved, contact your elected officials, know who they are, especially on the state level. So often these state offices kind of go under the radar, but they do so much more. They have such a big impact on our day-to-day lives, from everything from the stuff we're talking about right now to, are our colleges going to be funded? Are we going to have pre-K funded in the state? Are you going to, what's the local tax on groceries, for example? I mean, all of that stuff is controlled by the states and in the state legislature specifically. So get involved, know who those folks are. And if you'd like some help doing that, please, visit savemosunshine.org and we'll get you hooked up too.
Awesome, man. Lastly, where else can we find you? Do you have a Twitter handle? Where should we be looking for you?
Yeah, I do. I've got a couple things. Yeah. So on Twitter, I'm Big Elad, and that's true on Instagram too. So BIGELAD. And then on Facebook, YouTube. I mean, there's not that many Elad Grosses out there. So just ELAD and then gross like disgusting. Search for that and you'll find it. But there's a YouTube channel out there. If you go to my name, eladgross.live. That's actually where we do a lot of these town hall that are open for folks to ask questions about civic engagement. We just did one yesterday. So if you're interested, you can check out shows there. And then there's a podcast out wherever you get those too. And the podcast and the live show is called the Elad Pod. So you're welcome to search for any of that stuff, or you'll find my contact information too. So hit me up anytime.
Awesome. Thank you so much again. You've been really generous with your time.
Anytime.
Yeah. All the best.
Yeah, you too. Thanks for what you're doing. It's really important. And thanks for getting the information about Missouri. I'm a big fan of Missouri. So anybody else is hey, man, putting information out there about it is great. I'm happy.
Just want more people to know what's happening, right? Because it's a little wild. So
yes, a little bit.
All right, my friend. Well, thank you very much again. And hope to talk to you again soon.
Anytime.
Okay.